And my name's Carrie Latham. I'm a career counselor with the Student Success Center. I'm going to take you through this presentation, which is about considering graduate school. And before we get started, Rachel's joining us as well, and she has just a few things, housekeeping items to share.
Hi everyone, I'm one of the events and communication specialists in the SSC, so I'll just be helping out with the session today. Welcome. So I just want to let you know that we're going to be using the chat feature. Carrie has a few questions that she's going to be asking you, and we'd love to hear from you. So please go ahead and open up that chat feature and be ready to communicate with us. That would be great. Thank you. We're also going to be using the Q&A feature for any questions that you have. Carrie's going to spend probably about 20 minutes or so going through her presentation. She's then going to go through some frequently asked questions at the end. And at that point, if you still have questions, we'd like to invite you to add them to the Q&A feature at that point. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available on the Student Success Center website on the Further Ed Events page. It'll probably just take us a few days to get it up there. We'll also email you a copy of the session by the end of the week. And if there's any technical issue, please just use the chat to let me know and we'll do our best to help resolve those. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you. Okay, so first of all, I just wanted to hear from, have a bit of a conversation through our chat function. Rachel's going to help me with that. So first of all, I just want to, what are the reasons why we consider grad school? So whether that's, if you want to enter into the chat function, whether that's something that you're considering, why are you considering grad school? Or where you just hear people thinking about grad school? Because I think it's important to know the why. Why grad school? So if you want to use the chat function, and I will try to monitor it as best as I can. Yep, to gain further specialized knowledge for sure. So grad school is great for giving you more focus, more specialized, more advanced knowledge in a certain area. To continue my education path. Sure, people think about just this is good. I'm liking this studying. I like what I'm doing. This is a good space for me and I want more. Further application, yeah, qualified research. Yep. So there's maybe I want to be more involved with research. I want to gain that graduate level research skills. Great for that too. Yeah, I don't know what other options I have. That's sometimes a very common one as well, is just, I don't know what else to do. I know how to be a student. So I think I'll continue being a student. And so that's something good to really be honest with yourself about. Sometimes that people do look at grad school as a safer bet than going into the workforce because the workforce might be a bit too new for them or uncertain for them. Yeah, to have more options to pursue different career paths. Yeah, definitely some, people thinking about grad school as giving them more options, but I would just, and we'll go through this, but one thing definitely to be cautious about is options for what? Because like mentioned, already talked about, grad school is a great place to specialize and get more in depth into a certain area. So you want to make sure that specialized knowledge is what you need for those options that you're thinking about. So just be careful about the assumption that grad school is better. Okay, lots of great reasons to go to grad school. And I think that why I have this question here is just to make sure that you are thinking about why are you wanting to go on to grad school. Okay, so yeah, lots of different reasons for grad school: advanced knowledge, more specialized, just enjoying the subject. Maybe it's a requirement for the career field you're interested in, but just be careful about any assumptions that it's somehow better and that it's, I don't know what else to do. So just be careful about those. Okay, also want to ask you, when is the best time to pursue grad school? So what's your thoughts on that? Again, whether it's for yourself or what you hear people talk about when people go on to grad school. Yep, right out of undergrad, that's a very common one. You're sort of in the groove already, you're here, you think you just continue on, right? Is sort of one thing. Yeah, when you have a solid why to go, that's definitely a great one too. Sort of understanding the intention and being self-directed for grad school is really important. So go to grad school when you know why you're going to grad school. within a year of finishing your undergrad? It depends. Sometimes the timing is going to be like if it's a research intensive program and there's sort of advancement in the field quite frequently, then maybe going on to grad school in that field is maybe a bit important to kind of keep up with the times. But there's a lot of grad programs out there that actually want you to have more experience. So these might be more professionally focused grad programs. And when you're financially able to as well, that's for sure. So the big thing with this question is not feeling like you have to just keep going from undergrad to grad. It doesn't have to be a linear process. Lots of people take time, make sure it's what they want, make sure they're prepared. Some people just want a break and get a little bit more fresh and sort of ready for more schooling. Some people need to make sure they have their why figured out. And then some people want to, make sure they're financially available and ready to go. Yeah, a gap year, when you have good mental clarity, yeah, for sure. After getting some real world experiences. I love all these responses, this is great. And as you can see, really the answer is it depends on what's best for you. Okay, so in your circumstance, your area of interest. So two questions that I think we want to start off with when you're thinking of considering grad school is why and when. So the key thing is to, where to start is to reflect. Make sure you are spending some time thinking about your motivation for further education. When's the best time for you? Does grad school fit up with your career vision? If you're not sure what your career vision is, then maybe it's a good time to spend some time thinking about that. And will that grad school or that grad program help me get there? And then definitely sometimes it's just, I love this subject. I'm not too sure where I'm going to go with it, but I know this is the field for me, so I'm going to keep going, and that's great too. Okay, I'm just going to refer to my notes a little bit here. So if you see me moving my head over, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. So the key thing is this, where to start is to make sure that you are, being intentional, I think, about your grad when you're considering grad school. And so we do have some supports to help you with that intentionality and being self-directed and what is it that I want to achieve or what will be my career vision and goals. We have a career planning essentials course, which you're welcome to register for it through Oscar Plus under the events. It's listed in the first week of every month. So it's flexible, open access. Highly encourage you to consider this if you just want to sort of touch base a little bit and think about, where do I want to go and what are my options? We also have something called the digital challenge cards. These are a fun self-assessment tool, really easy to access through our website. And these help you to look at the kinds of challenges that you want to take on in the world. And another great sort of tool to use to help you reflect. Some other things to help you reflect and think about is thinking a little bit about your priorities for grad school. And you can think about it in 3 different ways. So you can think about your priorities academically. If I'm going on to grad school, what do I want this grad program to do for me? Like maybe I want it to be a thesis or a non-thesis. If it's more specialized knowledge, is it the right specialized knowledge? So thinking about your academic goals, how you like to learn, what's important for you to learn. But you can also think about your professional priorities. How does this grad program or what do I want this program to do? Do I want to have increased contacts maybe? Do I want to make sure the professor in the lab that I'm part of is really connected to the field? Or if it's a professional program, what opportunities are there maybe for an internship or co-op or, kind of involvement in the community? And then personal priorities. A lot of students forget about this, but it's really important. Finances, location, maybe your relationships that have to be considered, your own personal growth and what you want on a personal level too. So thinking about not just what grad programs are out there, but also what is it that you want? What's your intention? So academically, professionally, and personally, what are your goals? And then this is a great one when you have gone on to research grad programs, and I'll go into a little bit more about that. You can come back to your priorities and then help you to evaluate how these programs fit with your priorities and your goals. Okay, so step one, where to start after reflecting and thinking about your goals and priorities, is also to start exploring. And this is the fun part, where you get to sort of go out and see all the amazing programs out there. So we do have some great tools, so it's so much easier than Googling. If you Google, you're just going to get a lot of advertisements, or those, the priority listing that Google wants to give you. So Career Cruising is available to you through our library, and it's a great tool for exploring all the education programs in Canada. University Study is another great tool. Great for just searching. You can use keyword searches. So if you're interested in public health, put in public health. It kind of comes up lots of things there. And then also do check out the professional association website. So if it is a particular field you're thinking about going into, you can look that up. So for example, in my field in counseling, there's the Canadian Counseling and Psychotherapy Association. And if you go to their website, they have a nice listing of grad programs across Canada, and it makes your research so much easier if you just go to some really great tools. And then if you're searching and you're thinking, I don't know what I'm looking for, that's a good time to think about taking a step back and doing some career exploration, and just making sure that you're not feeling like you're just going around in circles and not sure what you're looking for. Okay. Okay, and then there are lots of different types of programs. So there's the traditional research intensive master's or PhD. So those are there. So that's sort of your area is maybe English, and you want to go on and do grad studies or PhD in English. That's sort of a continuation of more and more in depth and more knowledge. There's also maybe applied or what's project-based programs. These might be where you're learning your field, but it's not maybe a thesis or research, but maybe it's more of a project that you're working on, maybe a study that's more connected to the community. There might be some professionally focused programs that have internships as part of it. So things like the rehab sciences, like being an occupational therapist or physical therapist, they will have these clinical placements or practicums kind of as part of the program. And then there's some that are just course-based, more knowledge in the area, like just going and doing like a master's of finance, and it's just more understanding of the field, or a master's of economics. Good thing to think about though too is that some do require you to have the knowledge in the field. So psychology degree to go on and do clinical psychology. But there are a lot of programs out there that accept people from lots of different programs. So you don't have to feel sort of stuck with your undergrad as being dictating what your next steps are going to be. So for example, you can do a master's of social work with a honors degree in social science, they usually prefer, but you don't necessarily have to have a bachelor of social work to do it. Other examples are things like masters of sustainability or environmental management. So there's lots of range nowadays. So when you are sort of exploring, you can keep that in mind too, that you don't have to feel that you only can look for programs that are related to your undergrad, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah, and then there's lots of graduate level certificates and postgraduate certificates as well that you can look into. I have another presentation on alternatives to grad school that I'll be doing this afternoon. I'll go more into that, but also just to let you know, those are some great options as well. Okay. The other way when you're thinking about exploring, so there's the tools that I gave you, those websites for really targeted approach to looking for grad programs, but also talking to people in the field is really important. So if it's a particular career field that you're exploring, so maybe you're thinking about public policy or working in the government, then maybe talking to some professionals in the field might help to understand what their career paths were and what education paths led them to where they are now. So talking with people in the field, but also talking to professors and students in the programs of your interest. So this can give you an idea too about what the environment is like, what the program is like. And then of course, admissions coordinators and program coordinators, they're wonderful. That's their whole job, is really to help people with the admissions process. So if you have detailed questions about the application, and it's really important to talk to the admissions coordinator. And we have a further education fair coming up October the 21st and the 22nd. And this is a great opportunity for you to meet with some representatives from a range of programs. This is going to be an online chat. So you don't have to, be there for the full time, but you can kind of anytime within that time, you can kind of log on to the online chat and browse and talk to a range of representatives. So do encourage you to check that out to when it's part of your gathering information as well as exploring. Okay, more research when you are thinking about identifying some programs, maybe talking to some people in the field. The kind of research, like what do I look for, is I look at the school, what kinds of financial supports can they offer you, and what other kind of student supports do they give you as a graduate student. But then also the program, go right to the program site. And sometimes students have a hard time finding information on the website because there's generally a general grad sort of studies site, and then there's the program site. I find if you go right to the program website, you get the best information. And so make sure what's the structure of the program all about, what kinds of courses, what's the connections that program has. Are there other additional kind of ways you can think about how you're going to, how that program might fit for you. So make sure you research the program. And then also, if it is a research intensive program that you're applying to, make sure you do look at the research focus of the department as well as the professors. And that's a requirement to reach out to the professors and make sure it's a good fit for the professor and their research area and your research area. Some programs ask you to make sure that you do reach out to a professor, and some will specify that you don't need to sort of identify a professor. So just check that out when you're doing the research. Okay. Lots of details to gather. So when you start to get to this stage where you're identifying the programs, you're looking at all the details, the admissions criteria, lots of details. I do have a recording on our further education section of our website that goes into grad applications a little bit more. It's about a 13-minute presentation that you can listen to. The big thing with this slide is really there are a lot of details. And then the big thing is to keep yourself organized. And I do encourage you to get a spreadsheet, organize it, plan it out. This is great time management. So I encourage you to check out our academic skills supports too, because we do have some great webinars and recordings and tip sheets about time management. So this is a perfect example of how it is important to put all the details into a spreadsheet, organize it, schedule it, plan it out, create a timeline for yourself. And we do have some supports on our website. I've got this, if you go in there under Program Research Organizer, that is an Excel spreadsheet that it's already pre-populated with some typical grad application kind of columns. So you're welcome to edit it and change it, but it's a great one, great resource to start. As well as that video overview of grad applications goes into a little bit more detail of what you can anticipate or expect, and some guidance and tips on if you're at that stage of applying to grad schools. Okay, and then you get to a point where maybe you feel a little bit overwhelmed or confused or uncertain, intimidated. It's definitely very common to, well, will I get in? That's such a big common question. So at this stage, kind of when you're thinking about this, it's just really important to pay attention to those feelings. Our emotions are great signals for us. They let us know what's going on. They let us know that there's something that we need to pay attention to. The key thing, though, is to make sure that we are listening to ourselves, but not necessarily letting our emotions dictate what we should be doing, but use them as signals. So what are those? What is that saying? Is it the overwhelmed because we're not organized, and maybe that's just a matter of having to put all this information into some structure for ourselves? Is it confusion because we don't have enough information? Maybe it's just, okay, what is it that I don't know? And then, writing some questions down and figuring out, how do I get these addressed? Is it uncertainty because we're not sure if this is the right program for us, or I don't know what I want? Pay attention to where that uncertainty is coming from, sorry. And intimidation, and that's sort of normal. That sort of feeling of very common, I think, feeling is that imposter syndrome is like, oh, am I smart enough? Am I good enough? Those are all common doubts. It's just check in with yourself and saying, remind yourself that you've gotten this far, that there is a reason. Remind yourself of your priorities and your goals and what you want to achieve for yourself. And really encourage you to, pay attention to these important messages. But don't let it stop you. So sometimes you just have to then get to the point where you work the plan. Hi, Rachel.
Hey, we're about at the 20-minute mark, so I think you're right on time.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Talking about keeping yourself on track, it's also very helpful, I should add, to have people and supports around you too. That's always going back to that other slide. It's wonderful when you do have people to sort of encourage you, and we are here at the Student Success Center to do that with you. So we do offer career counseling, support with your application, so please encourage you. And we're open to all undergraduate students and alumni. Okay, so I'm going to move on now. The next section is I'm just going to address some frequently asked questions and see if this helps you. And then after this, I'll go into your questions once we finish with this. Okay, asking for references. That's usually a big question. We do have a tip sheet on asking for references. I'll just go through quickly. The key thing is you just have to ask, but think about who you can ask. You do want to consider professors or supervisors from your work or volunteer that are relevant to the program you're applying to. References that can speak about your suitability for the grad program or grad studies. So approach them, let them know your intentions, what you've researched, let them know about the deadlines, and you just need to ask, and then follow up with a thank you note. And again, there's a tip sheet that goes into a little bit more details, and then the recording about grad school applications mentions a little bit more about it as well. Concerns about marks. It is competitive. Some programs are more competitive than others. The big thing here is not to be worry about what you hear, right? There's lots of people say, oh, you need to have this or that, and there's a lot of messages. So just go to the program that you're thinking of the programs and talk directly with the admissions coordinators. Look at their website, see what they have. Sometimes program sites have great frequently asked questions sections, FAQs, and you can get your if you have questions about marks addressed there. And then keep in mind that it's the whole application. If the applications are looking for CVs or your resume and personal statement and references and marks, then you know it's not going to be just about the marks. It's about other things as well. Okay. If you're wondering though what kinds of marks, generally a B- is the minimum. So some programs I've seen they require like a minimum B-. And of course, a lot of grad programs might expect you to have more like a B+. And then again, more competitive programs might be higher than that. Here's some tools if you're trying to figure out your GPA and calculations. A lot of grad programs do look though at your last year or last 2 years as more representative of how you're going to be in grad studies. What is a CV? So if it is asking for a CV, think of it as just a academically focused resume, but there might be some very specific categories that you want to put into your CV. And again, we have a template on or a tip sheet on CVs that can help you with this. What is a letter of interest? This is a personal statement, letter of interest, letter of intent. These are sort of the languages used. And it's going to really represent your academic interest, why this program, what do you want to do with this program. So it's going to be about your intellectual interest or academic interest. I've got a great resource that I have there, as well as, again, a tip sheet on it and a recording as well. So more information you can gather about that. But you will see this letter of interest, letter of intent, personal statements, or just questions to respond to. Yep, supplemental questions. I think I'll keep going with that. Other than, sorry, one more thing I'll mention about this is it does take a lot more time to write than you think. A lot of students are surprised about, they think, oh, I can, it's only 500 words that they want me to write about. It does take a lot more time to refine and refine. So anticipate a little bit more time than you might think for writing personal statements or supplemental questions. What counts as experience? If it is a program that needs experience, paid or unpaid is typically acceptable. And this is when going to the program, and if they have information sessions, highly encourage you to use their information sessions. Right now, everything's online, so it should be fairly easy to access. And again, this is a great question to ask if you go to our further education fair, and that might be a great one to ask the representatives about what kinds of experiences you should be having to be a competitive applicant, depending on the program. Okay, down to almost my end here, down to now just some supports and services for you. Everything Oscar Plus, McMaster.ca, that's where you signed up for this event. We also have the Career Planning Essentials that I mentioned. That is self-paced and flexible. It's a no fee, no credit. It's a free course that we developed to help you with your career planning. We also have career counseling appointments on Oscar Plus through the Student Success Center. Those would be career and further education planning appointment types. We also have virtual career drop-ins. These might be quicker, short questions that you want to have a quick question on. You're welcome to use the drop-ins for that. There's just a little promo about that. And again, this is like a chat-based platform. You can come in any time between 1:30 and 4 and chat with a career counselor. And then on our website, we also have some tools and resources, and I mentioned a lot around the further education. But career cruising is also on the site, and there's an alumni partner network, which is great if you do want to use that to reach out to people in professions and research their maybe education paths, or you can inquire, like say you're thinking about doing an MBA, you can look on there to see, okay, who has an MBA, and then you can talk to them a little bit about their experience of how they applied and such. So it's a great tool. And sorry, this is blurry, but we also have some wonderful academic skills resources for you as well. So I encourage you to look those up. The writing centers are also trained on providing some feedback on personal statements on the writing aspect only, but you can book a writing appointment and some great workshops too to help you in whatever way to be successful academically. And I think we're at the end. So I think we're ready for questions now.
All right,
we're doing okay.
Thanks, Carrie. That was great. We've had a few questions come in. So we'll get started with what happens in a non-thesis grad school course?
Yeah, so it's going to be more intensive study. So think about your fourth year, maybe a seminar course. It's going to be everyone else at a grad level. So it depends on the program really, but if it's a non-thesis, then it's going to be course-based or depending, maybe project-based. So you'd have to look at the program structure and see how they have it organized. Mm-hmm.
Can I do a master's in psychology with an undergraduate degree in life sciences?
You'd have to look into that. A lot of the Masters of Psychology programs do want a psychology background. So this goes back to sort of they want you to have a really solid understanding of psychology before moving on to the master's level. But sometimes I have seen, and or equivalent. So with a life science degree, you might want to see how many psychology courses you've taken. And this is a perfect example of going and talking to the program admissions and asking them more specifically about, if you don't have a psychology background, would they consider you? How many psychology courses do they do? And then also how competitive. So Masters of Psychology programs tend to be fairly competitive. So it's also a good question to ask them. Now there's some Masters of Psychology that are research Masters of Psychology, and then there's the ones that might be more clinical counseling focused. So you'd have to check out which one you mean by that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And just a reminder to please use the Q&A feature if you're submitting questions. Is the GMAT mostly for MBA programs?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think I've seen the GMAT mostly for anything more management, business management focused. So I'm not sure if I've seen any that, like there's some interesting new programs like a biotechnology and management masters. And so I'm not sure if you might see that in some of those, but yeah, mostly the management, master's level management, business administration is generally where you'd see that. Mm-hmm.
If someone is in third year and they want to go to grad school right out of undergrad, when should they get the whole application process in motion? And when during the school year do they start applying for grad school?
Yeah, so that's great timing. I would say you've got good time to sort of research, explore, make sure you like do some career exploration, thinking about where you want to go, using those tools to start exploring. So I'd use, you're thinking about it now. You're here. I'd start thinking about that. Those first few steps that I talked about. Use that. Start now thinking about that. And then in the, I would say sort of towards maybe the end of your winter term, summer, or like spring, you might want to start thinking about approaching some of your professors or references and just saying, hey, I'm thinking about grad school. These are the ones I've been exploring, wondering if you could be a reference for me. And then depending on when the applications open up. So the applications will be directly through the school, unless it is a centralized program like law or teachers college. But you'll look at when the application opens up, when it closes, and then you might want to then sort of work your way backwards from that. As well as thinking about your fourth year, you've got your fourth year studies. So most, again, the application deadlines and when it opens and closes can vary depending on the program. But generally, we're doing the further education event now in October, because that's generally when a lot of the schools are promoting themselves. There's information sessions, there's fairs we always have. So thinking fall roughly is when you might want to think about the application. But again, it really can depend on your what program you're applying to. But keep an eye on when it opens and when it closes. That will give you the hint.
And how can we make a decision of pursuing thesis, research paper, or coursework-based masters?
Yeah, that goes back to thinking about what your goals are for grad school and what's your intention. Where do you want this program to lead you? What do you want to get from it? So is it research experience that will feel is something that you want personally, academically, or professionally will help you? So thinking about it from those priorities and doing that reflection, I think will be important. You can talk to maybe, the representatives of the program, maybe some students, get their feedback too on what, how they like it or what they don't, but always going back to what your goals and intentions are. Because when you apply to those programs, you're going to have to be very clear about your intentions. Writing personal statements and letter of intents, that's what they want to know. What's your intention? Why this program? So the clearer you are, the easier it is to write those parts of this application.
And just to follow up to that, if someone isn't big on research and thesis, are they still able to apply to grad school? Are there other options?
Yeah, there's lots of there's so much more variety of grad programs now. So use that those two sites I mentioned, Career Cruising and that University Study, as well as if there is a particular area that you're interested in. LinkedIn also, I forgot, I didn't mention LinkedIn. LinkedIn's great for sort of exploring what people have done, like what field they're in and what education path they're on, as well as that alumni partner network I mentioned. Those are great ways to talk to people in the field, but also those two databases are great for just seeing what's out there and exploring. And definitely there are options to do graduate level work that is not research intensive. Yeah.
And there are a few questions here about how kind of the grades work for final year. And so what's considered the final year, and what if they don't have their second semester grades back yet? How does that work?
Yeah. So generally, when you think about the application deadline, so if the deadline is, say, February the 1st, then they will think about what marks they'll have, and that's what they're going to look at. So if it's the final year they're looking at, think about like your last, year's worth of marks that they're going to have. So that could be dipping into your third year. Like if you're applying in your fourth year and if the deadline's in February and they're looking at your last year or last 2 years, then think about just going backwards 2 years worth. And that's kind of the marks they're going to use. And that's another great reason, like when we talked about when to apply to grad school, another consideration is thinking about doing all of this application process in your final year. And if your marks, maybe your fourth year marks are going to be great, and maybe you could be a much better candidate and put together a stronger application if you wait till you have all of your fourth year marks, and then you can apply after your degree. So that's another consideration too, is yeah, what marks will they see? So they work backwards of wherever the deadline, the application deadline is. Mhm.
And just a few questions about references. When's the correct time to ask someone to be a reference? And are you able to ask a reference when you're not sure about where you'll be applying to grad school?
Yeah, it depends on your relationship. I kind of like the idea of giving your references notice. Just because you know if they're gonna be a reference, they're basically gonna be in your corner. They're basically agreeing to say, yes, I agree, I support you with your application to grad school. So it's great to sort of let them know your intentions. So if you don't know, you just know I do want to go to grad school. I'm going to start researching soon, but just thought I wanted to check in with you. Maybe it's a professor that you've gotten to know very well in maybe through research or maybe through a course that you did really well in. It's not bad to touch base with them, just sort of, and get their advice too. Any suggestions? I'm really interested in this area. I'm going to start researching. Do you have any suggestions of schools or programs that would be suitable? So get them in your corner. But then when you're actually much more clear on your application, that's when you'd have to go and approach them with, I'm applying to this program. Here's the deadline. And then typically what happens is when you put in your application, you would then indicate the person's name and their contact information. And then the application will send them an email directly to have them fill out a form or a grad application, like some sort of referee form. And then they send it sort of more behind the scenes. So you don't necessarily have to get a letter from them. You just need to sort of let them know what you're applying to, what the program's all about, and then make sure that they're okay with that. So closer thinking again when the application opens and when it closes, just thinking within that time frame is when you should be asking your references in earnest. Mhm.
And does the SSC have any services for McMaster alum if they choose to go to grad school a year or two later after they graduate?
Yeah, great question. Yes, we do. We are very fortunate. We have alumni career counseling services for up to 10 years after you graduate. So yeah, another reason if you're wondering about when to apply to grad school and worried about resources, definitely take the time that you need to be ready for grad school. And we are here to help you when up to 10 years after you graduate. So you can just through our office, you can look for alumni career counseling appointment types. Yeah.
And what makes a standout application?
Ah, um, it depends again on the application you're applying to. But just really thinking about, can you hit all the marks? So the marks are academically, like, are you a strong academic person? Because grad studies is going to be more intense, right? More self-directed. So making sure that your academics are strong, making sure your references are very strong, and they can speak very highly about you. And then if there is a resume or personal statement, is just spend time on that as well. Make it you, make it unique, make it focused to the program, I think is really important. But that's a great question to ask representatives. Talking to the program admissions people a little bit about, once you've got to that level of understanding what's required for the program, and this is the program you want, that might be a great thing to ask the admissions people, or maybe students that have maybe graduated from the program, get some insight. And again, we have our fair just to help you do that. Talk if there's some programs that are interesting for you. I talk to our representatives at the fair too.
So I think we'll just have time for a few more questions. We do want to try and wrap up by 12:15, so we'll ask probably maybe 2 or 3 more.
Sure.
Do you have any suggestions for building relationships with professors and getting involved with people who struggle with social anxiety?
Yeah, I was so nervous when I had to ask my references. I thought, oh, they're not going to remember me when I applied to grad school. Yeah, I think I'd start with where you're comfortable. So it's now that we're online, I know it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but it could be something like participating in the chats, making sure your name is there, asking good questions, showing engagement in whatever way you can. I think just showing that you're interested and engaged. So start with where you're comfortable. And then think about trying to build that up a little bit. So maybe it's starting with a TA and feeling a little bit more comfortable with that. And maybe it's just arranging to ask for an individual appointment if they can, or if your prof has office hours, make good use of the office hours and go in and sometimes it's easier to talk about a subject instead of yourself. So go in and use the office hours to talk about something that's going on in the class. So start small, but start is the key thing, I think. Mhm.
And not all school programs are made the same. How can I tell if one grad school program is better than another?
Mhm. So yeah, so if that's part of your academic goals, like thinking about your academic priorities, is that it has it's a strong reputation or it's really well thought of in the industry, then I would, that's where talking to people in the field already would be really helpful, as well as maybe some graduates of the program to get their feedback on it. It's important to think about what's best for you. Like there might be a program has a good reputation, but is it going to be what you need to move you forward in your approach? There might be some highly competitive fields, and I don't know, maybe that's not going to be where you're comfortable, or maybe it is. Maybe that's where you're going to thrive in that level of competition. So just be careful that you're thinking about the programs and the schools based on what is good for you. Um, but if yeah, so finding whether if it's a good program, if it's sort of quality wise, I would investigate with people that have graduated from the program would be my first thought, is to get their opinion of it. Mhm. Or people in the field. If it is a sort of a focused, like an MBA program, then talk to people in the area that you're interested in to see what they feel about the program. Mhm.
And can students apply for grad school right out of third year?
No, I think most programs there might be some programs that allow 3-year degree, but I'm trying to think, not many that I've seen. I think all of them really do want that honors degree to move on. But maybe I've seen, it depends, but I would say maybe only a few that I've seen over the years. If my memory's correct. Yeah.
And the last question we'll be able to take live is, will the thesis component be waived this year for applications due to COVID-19 making it difficult to conduct research on campus?
That would be, sorry, could you repeat the beginning of the question again?
Will the thesis component be waived this year for applications due to COVID-19 making it difficult to conduct research on campus?
So basically, it's asking whether the requirements for entrance into grad school will be adjusted. That is a great question for the admissions people. It's going to be very individual, very unique. So I wouldn't take a general statement. Like if you hear someone talking about, have an answer to that, I'd make sure it's applicable to the programs that you're considering. So yeah, it might make it, if they programs still want research experience, that this year might be a little bit of a challenge. But it's just a matter of then creating a strategy for yourself and thinking about how you can get that research experience. But check with the schools and see what they say. I do know at our further education fair, I think we've got quite a few research intensive science programs coming. So that might be a good question to see what they have to say about that. Mhm. And sorry, going back to the question about 3 years in grad school, just to clarify, I know sometimes people think about, when I was answering that about grad school, I was thinking graduate studies, but some people go on to professional schools like law and teachers college and things like that. And so that's a different scenario. So if it's a professionally focused program and you're wondering about if you can apply after 3 years, then check the schools. Okay, there's definitely more options if it's a professionally focused post further education program. Yeah.
And for all the questions that weren't answered today, can they just come to one of our drop-ins? Is that what you would recommend, Carrie?
Yes, perfect. Yeah, come to our drop-ins. They're chat-based, text-based chats, and you can just drop in anytime. Go to the events page on Oscar Plus, and you'll see them on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday afternoons. And there's a link there that you would get, and then you can just register, and we'll be able to address those questions. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thanks, Rachel. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, thank you for attending. Have a great day, everyone.
Okay, bye everyone. Thanks for joining us.